Our webinar is about 5 techniques for effective self-coaching, and during this webinar we will cover all not only self-coaching techniques, but we will talk a bit about general information on coaching and self-coaching. So what is coaching and what is self-coaching and what is the difference between these two modes. As I said, I will try to answer the questions at the end of the session, so you can write it there in the question window. And if you have any problems with sound, also please write, and I will try to fix it if everybody else also doesn't hear me. So what is coaching in general, and who is a coach? A coach is a person who helps you to come from point A to point B and to find the shortest way to do it. Actually, this way cannot be the easiest one, but it usually takes you less time than in case you did it alone. And also, coach can identify a point B together with you, with asking you certain questions or providing you some coaching techniques. Because sometimes a person wishes to change something, but there is no clear understanding what should be changed. For instance, a person can have lots of ideas in mind, but cannot decide what should be done first, or what idea is much more priority for the person. And the coach can help to identify the point B and can guide a person through difficulties, can provide support to a person, encouragement to a person, can also provide techniques that make the way from point A to point B much more easier for the person. So what is actually self-coaching? Self-coaching is the same process, but now you act as a coach for yourself. And it can contain some limitations because you cannot use the knowledge and the energy and the skills of the coach, so you can only rely on yourself in this situation. But on the other hand, it can have different benefits as well. So self-coaching is free of charge, so you don't need to pay for these. And during self-coaching, you can have a full control over the whole session. You can choose date and you can just choose time that is suitable for you, and you can choose place. And actually, when I'm doing coaching sessions with people, when I'm doing career coaching at Luxoft, sometimes people ask me whether it is possible for them to do this or that technique by themselves. And for some techniques it is possible, and I can describe them the mechanism of the technique, the algorithm of the technique. But for some techniques it is not possible, and you still will need a coach. During our webinar we will discuss the techniques that are quite safe to do by yourself, and to get all these benefits like free of charge, full control over session. And you can also gain self-confidence during self-coaching, determination and motivation. And what you can also get is that self-coaching will eventually become an automatic response to challenges in your life. And it can lead you to increased success if you know how to coach yourself. You can learn things about yourself you may not have consciously be aware of during the self-coaching sessions. And self-coaching can help you to solve problems faster, and at the end, self-coaching can change your mindset, and you can become a better mentor for yourself and better mentor for others. So practicing self-coaching is quite good, and you can do it by yourself, but in case you have or you need some specific knowledge or expert advice, you will still probably should contact a coach. What is not coaching and what is not self-coaching? Coaching is not therapy. It doesn't focus on past, heal emotional wounds or soothe symptoms. A coach actually assumes, and you as a self-coach, you should assume that you are yourself capable and qualified to work with yourself, that you don't have any traumatic experience with your life that you would like to work about, because it is the area of therapy and not coaching. So if you would like to heal something that happened in your past, it is better to contact a therapist. Coaching is not a consulting, and a coach doesn't know all answers to all questions. A coach guides you through the process when you can find your own answers. And when you act as a coach, you can do it by yourself. And the coaching is not a friendship. Coach supports and motivates a person, and coach provides a knowledge and skills to the person. On what level we work as coaches and we work as self-coaches? Here is a Dill's pyramid of neurological levels. And in coaching and in self-coaching, we work mostly in behavior and capabilities levels. It is the levels of what we do and how we do it. Capabilities, it is skills. So we can change during coaching the behavior and our skills. Sometimes it is possible to change values and beliefs, but here it is mostly a work for a coach, not as a self-coach. As for identity, person or purpose, mostly it works for a therapist. But there is an interesting vision of this pyramid, that changing the levels, the upper levels can change the down levels and vice versa. So when you're changing your behavior patterns, it can have impact on your capabilities, and it can then change your values and beliefs and identity and purpose. So it works in two directions. So actually when you do self-coaching, you can also change your identity or values and beliefs. Before we go to the next slide, I will check the questions tab to make sure that you hear me. There is a question about the materials and recording, and I will for sure share the materials of this presentation to all of you, and the link to the broadcast when it is ready to be distributed to participants. I will do it in your emails that you put it in registration form. So now we are going to self-coaching techniques itself, and before we start talking about it, I would like to mention that there are techniques that work perfectly well with our conscious part, with our logical part. And there are techniques that are more aimed to work with our subconsciousness. And these techniques can seem to be a bit crazy. There are people who like these subconsciousness techniques, and there are people who think that it's not true and it will not work for them, these techniques. But the main idea about coaching and self-coaching is to do a technique and to see the result. Because when you don't do the technique, you can't understand what the result will be. Because when you only speculate about the technique, to think about the technique, the steps of the technique, it will not work for you. You should do it. And the first technique, and by the way, before you start doing self-coaching, and coaching, if you coach someone, you should take into consideration some prerequisites for a coaching session. You should understand when this session should happen. You should allocate appropriate time for the session. You should be in resourceful state. What it is mean? It is mean that you should be in good mood. You should have a good sleep before this session. You should feel okay to have strength to do this session. And when you do the coaching session for yourself, you should ask other people do not disturb you for 30 minutes or 1 hour, so you can concentrate, you can focus on the technique. Where it is necessary to find a comfortable place where you feel safe and secure to do the coaching. And some coaching techniques require space, so you need to work on this when doing these techniques. So for some coaching techniques you should get some place around you to do. You should also understand why you do the coaching. You should have a coaching request in your mind when you go for a coach or when you do a coaching technique by yourself. Because if you don't understand why you do this or that thing, you can hardly be able to find the answer, because if there is no question, there is no answer. You should also define what is a good result for you, how you know that you reach this result at the end of the session. You should work out some parameters, how you know that the result is achieved. So how to do coaching and self-coaching? You need to choose appropriate technique, and we will discuss it during our presentation. You should follow the instruction of the technique, and you should ask yourself, for instance, after the technique when it is done, what has changed? And you should ask yourself, for example, in a couple of days, what has changed since I did this technique? Because some techniques works right away, so you did the technique and you see the result, and some techniques need some time to pass. It usually takes nearly 2 or 3 weeks to see the result of some techniques. But definitely if half a year passed and there is no result, it means the technique didn't work for you. So you better wait for just 1 month to see whether the technique worked for you and whether it is not. During the presentation I will try to identify the time slots for the techniques to make effect on you. And the first technique is of a kind that provides you a possibility to get the result right away. It is a technique for decision making, and it is based on the works of René Descartes, who was a French mathematician and philosopher, and who is typically identified by the quotation, "I think, therefore I am." Descartes created a mathematical system that in order a theorem to be correct, it should be proven in 4 different ways. These ways, the quadrates, you should see it now on presentation, are described as Cartesian coordinates. This Cartesian logic has been utilized to form 4 questions that explore a certain level of thinking. So when making decisions, you can question it from 4 different types, from 4 different angles. For instance, it is the typical questions. Here you can see, what will happen if I do positive, positive? What will happen if you don't do it? Positive, negative. What will happen if you do it? Negative, positive. And what will happen if you do not do it? Negative, negative. You can think that the questions are similar, but actually our mind works in a way that provides different questions, that provides different answers to these a bit similar questions. And let's see how it can work in practice. For instance, what will happen if you quit your job? And I have provided here several possible answers. I will get an opportunity to find a job that suits me better. I will never see my manager again. I stop spending an hour and a half to my trip to the office. The next question, what will happen if you don't quit your job? I will be able to have paid vacations next month. What will happen if you quit your job? I will not get my quarter bonus. And what will not happen if you don't quit your job? I won't be able to find a job that gives me a sense of satisfaction. So whenever you're investigating some situation and you need some decision to make on this situation, you can explore it asking these different types of questions over it, and you can also write down your answers. What I recommend you to do then, when you have all answers written for each question type, you can have as many answers as you like. I have written here like 3 answers, 1, 1, and 1 answer. You can have, there is a window, this keeps bothering me. I would like to do something with it. Okay. So when you get your question list, then you can make pro-con analysis after this. You can write the pros and the cons for your decision. But before this, you can do this decision-making technique that is called Cartesian coordinates to get all your questions out of your mind, to get all the answers out of your mind. So this is very logical, and I think very logical technique, and I think it is quite easy to do. And actually, when someone came to you to ask some question or would like you to decide on some situation for this person, you can not only decide on this situation and provide right away some answer, you can also ask the person these questions. But before, better you tell him or her that you are going to act as a coach for a bit and to investigate or explore the situation together with him or her. The next technique that I would like to describe is working more with your subconscious mind. And it is based on eye movement desensitization and reprocessing method. This method has a profound scientific background, but we will not go deep into it. But we will see how to do this technique, and even without using our eyes. It can be used only with our hands. When you should use this technique? It works pretty well when you're stuck in some emotional state. For instance, if you feel that you are feeling angry or annoyed or too over-emotional about something, it can stop the pattern. And this technique should work right away. So after 1 minute of doing this technique, you should feel better. You should feel probably like that your state has been changed. So when you feel something that you can't, when you feel some feeling that you can't stop, you should put your hands crisscross on your shoulders, as it is shown on this picture. And you should stop clapping your shoulders with your hands. 2 claps, 1 clap for each shoulder for 1 second. So 2 claps should be done during 1 second interval. It should be done very quickly. You should focus very sharply on what you are doing. All your focus should be on this clapping. And you should do this technique for nearly a minute. There is no need to do it more, because it should work during just 1 minute. Sometimes it takes me to do it for 40 seconds. Sometimes it needs a bit more than a minute, for instance, 1.5 minutes, but not more. How I understand that this technique is finished for me? I usually would like to take a deep breath. So I'm doing this technique, doing it for some time, and then I felt that I need to breathe deeply. And when I did it, I understood for myself that the technique is done. And in most cases, actually, probably even in all cases, it works for me. I feel that I have changed my emotional state for something else, and there is now a choice for me either to come back to the emotional state that I was, or to start feeling something else. So it just breaks the pattern, and then it is up to you what to do next, to stop feeling this pattern again or to stop feeling something else. The next technique works pretty well when you need to incorporate some new experience into your life. What it can be? It can be some public speaking event, it can be some presentation, it can be job interview, some tough negotiations, or just flying with parachute. Something that you haven't did before, or something that you did before but still feel unwell about it. For instance, you already have done several presentations for 20 or 50 people, but you are still not okay to do it once again. So this technique helps our mind to incorporate this new experience without actually living through it. And this technique has several very important steps to do in order it start working for you. So for this technique, you will need a space. You will need a space probably 1 meter in width and maybe 2 or 3 meters in length. It depends actually on the situation. You should have also some prerequisites, like for instance markers or stickers, because you will need to mark on the floor the stages of the situation. I use for this a deck of cards because I like to play poker, and cards is a quite positive marker for me. So I use cards. You can use whatever you like, but these objects should be of neutral meaning to you or positive meaning to you. So you should feel okay when you are handing it, when you taking it in your hands. So the first steps that you should do in this technique, you should identify the situation that you would like to work with. For instance, it can be a presentation at your office. You should identify when this presentation should happen. For instance, it is a mid of February. Where it will happen? Well, it will happen in some of our conference rooms in our office. If you know what the conference room it will be better. But still you know that the presentation in your office, and it is at the mid of February, and you probably know in what conference room it will be. If you feel very, very stressed about this presentation, you could start doing these techniques even a couple of days. Like the first event on the timeline will happen even 2 days before this event. But if you're quite okay about this presentation, but just feeling nervous but not very nervous, you can start with the morning. And the first landmark on the floor will be the morning of the day when you are going to make a presentation. So it will be the morning of the 15th of February. And you put a marker on the floor. For instance, it is a sticker, so you put some sticker on the floor, you stand on it, and you say, okay, it is like morning on February, and it is the morning when I am waking up, and what I see when I am waking up. Well, what I see my bedroom probably, so it should be some time period, not very long, for instance, for a couple of minutes. So these landmarks works pretty well with time slots no more than a couple of minutes. So it is the morning on the day of my presentation, and I waking up and I see my bedroom. How my bedroom looks like? My bedroom is not very big. It has dark colors, and there is a window, and you should describe in details what you actually know already about your bedroom. Standing on the landmark that you could have put it on the floor. Then you ask yourself, what I'm hearing? I'm hearing my neighbors. They, for instance, they switched on music because they always do it on every morning, or I hear the traffic on the road because I am living near the road. So you need to gather the sounds. What you do with this, you try to be fully engaged in this situation. You try to be really in this situation. And how I feel. How I feel when I'm waking up and when I'm thinking that I'm having this presentation this day, you can say, I feel fine. I actually don't think about this presentation when I'm waking up. But on the other hand, there can be some situations when you feel already nervous on the morning, and you try to explore this feeling. For instance, I'm waking up and I see my bedroom and I hear some traffic at the window and I feel some tremor of my hands. And what else can I feel? I feel something in my chest that is not okay, something tightening. And you should go deeper in your feelings in your body, what you feel in your body. And it will be the first step. Then you make another landmark. For instance, it will be a time when you arrive at your office and you put another landmark on the floor and stay on it. And you ask yourself again, what you see when you arrive at your office. For instance, it is 10 o'clock and you see the hall of the office. It has light colors, it is big, there is some people moving around it. So you just describing some general situations that happen every morning at your office. We are trying to stick to some general patterns that we see every day to make our mind to believe that we are living through it right now. And what I hear some people talking, I also hear some cars at the street when I'm standing in the hall. And how I feel, I start feeling more nervous. And it is really good if you start feeling some tremor already when you are standing on these landmarks. And what will be the third landmark? It can be the landmark when I'm entering the conference room of my presentation. It can be either in the evening or at the daytime or just right when you came to the office. So the third landmark, when I stand on it, what I see conference room, I see there is some people in conference room, or there is no people if you come very early to it. The room is in yellow colors if you know it. And what I hear silence, or I hear like computers working in this room. And again, how I feel, and you very deeply go into your feelings. And then the fourth landmark can be a first slide of your presentation. So what you see first slide of your presentation, you see all people are looking at you, and you see the projector. And what you hear your own voice. Probably you'll start talking about the first presentation slide or making some introduction of yourself. And how do you feel? And again, you're deeply going to your feelings. You need to get this feeling of tremor, the feeling of nervousness right away when you're standing in these landmarks. When you did all your landmarks, if the event is very important for you, you can have very small chunks, for instance, for each hour. Like I am waking up and I'm going to office, I'm going by taxi or by car to office, and I'm entering office, and then I'm having lunch, and then I have some other meetings, and only after this I have presentations. So if the situation is not very critical for you, you can have just several landmarks. If it is very important, some public speaking events at conference, you can have 20 or 25 landmarks. When you did it once, you should come back again at your first landmark and did it for nearly 15 or 20 times to make sure that your mind believe that you already had this experience of this situation. It can be a bit boring, but It works so well, at least for me and for people who I did this for, that this boringness is nothing comparing to the result you get, because you feel much more better at the event itself, because you already lived it through, you already felt nervous about it, you already felt all the stress about it. So when you come to the stage or when you come at your presentation, you feel quite calm. You still feel some nervousness, but it is not overwhelming you. It is not makes you overreact. Let me see at question tab. No, in this presentation there will be nothing about Agile. It is just about coaching. There is a question about Agile. Whether you should not have a very good ability of visualization, actually I can't say that it is crucial. You just describe yourself what you see around you. If you're not very detailed in it, that is fine. It is your way of seeing things around you. So you can just make some general notes on what you see, but have probably you more focus on hearing some things. So here it is, and we need to go to new techniques. And this technique helps us to work with our guilty pleasures. And what it can be smoking. It is actually bad habits. It can be smoking, it can be eating, can be going sleep late at night, or then drinking too much coffee. And it is something that you can't change logically. You tried, but you failed. And it is a habit, and you would like to change it, but you can't. What can also be appropriate to work with the next technique that I'm going to describe. It can also helpful to when you're working with some dysfunctional behavior patterns of yourself, like feeling angry at someone very particular. When some person came to you, you always feel angry at her or him, or feel annoyed, or whenever some email came to you, you feel nervous, or when someone crying at you, you feel shocked and you can't do anything about it. So it is the cases when this technique can work for you, the next technique. And it is again the technique to work with your subconsciousness. And it is also you need to have your imagination to switch on when doing this technique. And but on the same time, even if you think that you will not be able to do this technique, you should try to do it. And because I have never seen a person who was not able to do it. So maybe the description is quite tricky, but in the end, I'm sure that you will be able to do it and you will be able to get the result. So, define behavior pattern or strategy that you would like to change. It should be in positive statement. It should be about yourself and not about people around you, and it should be real. That means that it is a real behavior pattern that you would like to change. It is not that something that you think that you have, but you really on daily, on weekly basis demonstrate it. For instance, I feel annoyed with my colleague Dmitry, or I feel stressed when changes happen. When any changes happen or some particular changes happen, I feel stressed. And I wish to change it. Or I am a smoker and I would like to get rid of this habit. After this, you should use, I'm smiling because, yes, some people can think that technique is a bit crazy, but it works pretty well. And after you set the pattern that you would like to change, you should set the communication to your internal part that is responsible for this behavior. You should find this part in your body where you have the feeling, for instance, of stress. When I am stressed, where it is in my body that I feel this stress. For instance, it is in my stomach, or it is in my chest, or it is in my head, or it is in my legs, or in my arms. What is this feeling about? Is it a bit tightening or widening? So you need some kinesthetic representation of this state. And then you should try to visualize it, how this feeling can be described as an image or is something visual. For instance, it seems like I have a red ball in my stomach. For instance, it is a way I can feel stress. Or it can be a blue cloud in my head. It is also can be the way that I can feel stress. It can be anything. Usually people are able to do it. You can ask yourself several questions, even if I don't know how it can like. And then you should ask this part about a possibility to collaborate with you, whether this part would like to talk to you. Usually the answer is yes. And if you get just no answer, you need to stop the technique. So here it is, but usually you will get the yes answer. And then you can ask this part to tell you about the reason for this behavior. It is not that you are just imagining something. It is really you are talking to this part, you have found this part, you visualize this part, and you're asking this part, why you do this for me? Why you make me to feel stressed, very stressed when someone is crying at me? And you should ask whether this part would like to tell you the reason or not. Sometimes the part can tell you the reason and you can know what it is about. For instance, once I did this technique for a girl who would like to get rid of smoking, and the reason for smoking was actually not a smoking, but to having a break. I mean, to stop in doing something. The smoking was really a relaxing time for her, because all other time she can't stop doing something. She was doing something at work, she was doing something at home, but smoking was really her own time, when she can stand or sit, just think about something pleasant and just do smoking and relaxing. So the reason for smoking was relaxation. And if the part won't tell you the reason, it also fine. You say, okay, thank you. And if the part say you a reason, you say, okay, thank you. And you will also tell this part that you will come back to her a bit later and bring you some presents to this part. And after this, you will try to find your creative part. We all have creative parts because we invent something usually and we do some new stuff in our lives. So, and people are quite creative in their nature, and we try to find this part in our body, how it can look like. It can look like a tree in our ass. It again can look like some golden balls, something else. And you ask this part to find nearly 10 ideas of new behavior pattern that can replace the pattern that you are suffering from. For instance, if you feel shocked and you can't speak when someone is shouting at you, or you start crying when someone's shouting at you, what can be some other way of behavior in this case? And you ask this creative part to provide you just 10 ideas how it can be done in a different way. And you give some time to this part. Usually it takes nearly 10 or 15 minutes. It takes time before you start generating the ideas, and you just write down these ideas. Even if you think that these ideas are not okay, if you think that this is not true and this is not real ideas, you're just writing down these ideas. It can be anything. It can be just go to swimming pool or drink water or call your friend. It can be actually anything. So you're writing 10 ideas, You will say again, thank you to this part, and you go back to the first part who generates some behavior that you're not okay about, and you say this part that you bring this part several other variants of behavior that probably can replace their first behavior pattern. And you start just suggesting these new behaviors to this part, one by one, and you ask the part to choose something from it. And the part can choose. It can choose just a couple of variants, but here you should understand that if this first part chooses these ideas, you should implement it. Just you should be honest with your subconsciousness. So if you suggest something and it agreed on it, you should also do this. So you should, if you get this confirmation from your subconsciousness that there will be new behavior pattern, you should start implementing it by yourself. I mean, if the subconsciousness told you that instead of crying when you are shouted at, you should go to the window and look at the window, you should do this. And when it is done, when the part chooses some variance, you should say thank you again, and you should do a friendly check. You should ask all your patterns that you have, apart from these two, because we usually have different patterns, to speak up if some part is not okay about your new behavior, and to listen to your internal dialogue. And if there is something that is not okay, you should work with it and identify what behavior pattern will be more appropriate for this case. Then you should integrate your new behavior. How you do it? You imagine a situation where was bothering for you. When you feel nervous, you feel stressed, you feel annoyed. You imagine these, for instance, you are annoyed with some of your colleagues, and you imagine how your colleague came to your table, and instead of feeling annoyed, for instance, you need to stand up. It will be a new behavior pattern. And you stand up, you imagine how you do this, and you again try to understand what you feel now when you imagine this. If you feel better, even imagine this situation, so the technique worked for you. If not, probably you should do it once again, or you should do something else, because not every technique will work for you, but it is at least a possibility to a way out. So if you feel fine, the technique worked for you, and you can then practice it on real situation. You say thank you to yourself, and the technique is done. One more technique that I would like to show you today is Neurological technique, and it is called well-designed result. Actually, it is a technique to understand what will be for you a good result, to explore the situation, the current situation, and to explore the transition state to this new result. So it is quite easy, no subconsciousness, no parts, only logic. So you should identify, first of all, of the current state. You should then identify how you feel now, what you see, what you hear about the situation that you're in. For instance, you should describe your current stage, your current position at work if you would like to change it, how you're feeling about this position at work that you have now. You should also identify the context of the situation. I will provide more details to yourself about your current state, your current position, your current feeling. You should identify secondary benefit for these. What benefits you get from the current state or from the current position, what it is good for you in it. And you should list the right solutions, because probably you have already tried to change the situation and did several actions and you failed, and you should have it listed. because now you will need to think about something new. Also, in this technique, you should identify the desired state. You again identify criteria, how you know that you get already what you want. What are the parameters of it? You should also identify, have you ever have such state or something that you want? And if you already had it some time ago, how you felt about it? When you will, what it will look for you, or what you will feel when you get what you want. This desired state should be realistic and relevant. So if it is not realistic and not relevant for the current situation, if you want something that is not actual for you for this current moment, probably there is no need to make any actions toward it. The positive statement mean that you should say what you want and not what you don't want. For instance, I don't want to go at work that I don't like. It is not the way the desired state should be identified. You should be quite detailed, and positive means the sentence should be in positive mode. For instance, I want something and not I don't want something. So what you should design here what you want. And again, you should, this desired state should be eco-friendly. You should think about the possibility that this new desired state can make some harm to people around you, to your family, to your friends, or for instance to your health. You should make this eco-friendly check of the desired state. So when you identify current state and desired state, you should go through the transition plan. And you should list what challenges you have on your way to the desired state, why you have not got it already, what prevents you from getting it, this desired state. You should identify resources, what skills you have to get this desired state, what knowledge you have, what mindset abilities, what are your beliefs that can help you to get the desired state. Resources is also people around us. What people can we contact to get something that we would like to get? What should we do, some actions to achieve our goal? And you should identify the first step toward your goal, what you can do today or tomorrow to become closer to your goal, what and when will you do the first step. Probably you should identify some due date of your first step. And it will be quite good if you can promise someone that you will do something toward your step. For instance, you can tell someone that you promise that you will do some action tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and when you do this action tomorrow at 5 o'clock, you will call this person or send a text message that you did it. And when you identified your first step, you can actually identify all other steps toward your desired state, and what will be the final state, the final step to get the desired state. And there is also a technique when you go not from the first step to your desired state, but from the last step. So you identify your last step to get the desired state. For instance, a friend of mine wished to buy a flat, and the last step of getting it was signing off some documents, providing money and signing off some documents. And she started counting down from this step. And then you making this timeline from the last event to the first event. It can also help. For some people it works pretty well from the first to the last, and for some from the last to the first. So this technique is called well-designed result, and it's pretty well when you're working with goals. But when you're working with goals, it is also good to take in mind the SMART method. When a goal is specific, so it is something very detailed, it is not a general, it is measurable, So it has some parameters to identify. It is achievable, it is relevant for you, and it is time-boxed. It means that you can check whether you achieve this goal or not achieved during a timeline. Before we go to question answering session, we have 5 minutes for it. I would like to tell you that if you need a coaching, if you're a Luxoft employee, and if you need a coaching session with me, you can contact me by email, and I will probably find 30-40 minutes for a coaching session with you. Because Luxoft Agile Practice is now piloting a service that is called career coaching, and we help people to identify their career paths, help them to develop these career paths, to identify their likes and dislikes about career, and help them to achieve their goals, their career goals. And now I will have a look at questions. I'm not sure that I will be able to answer all of it, but I will go through it after the presentation and in email that I will send to you with webinar materials. I will try to answer all the questions from this question tab. So let me see. Ability about Zoom. There is not so much questions that I thought. There are some that I need some time to think over, and I will answer it in email. It will be really great if you provide some feedback on this webinar to me. I will leave the session open for a couple of minutes, so if you have some feedback, if you like or dislike something, I will be glad to find out about it, to make our webinars more interesting and more resultful for you. Thank you, all of you, for coming today. It was great to see so many people, and I hope to see you on my next webinars. I'm planning several webinars on motivation, on facilitation, and I will continue to do webinars on coaching. So again, thank you and have a good evening today. Bye.